The following program is a production of Naleo TV.
Kona Moon, shining so bright, smiling at you, right out of the sky.
Under the Kona Moon is brought to you in part by La'iopua 2020 and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Storytelling is a Hawaiian tradition that spans the centuries. Kawaiʻola News is dedicated to sharing the stories of the Hawaiian community. Go to kawaiʻola.news to hear oiwi from across the Paeaina share their challenges and victories as they move the lahui forward. View bonus video stories and expanded photo coverage online. Explore Kawaiʻola's story archive sharing important moments in Hawaiian history. Visit and subscribe to kawaiʻola.news. News for the lahui.
Ka pi'ina o ai mea I ka pāmai ake ke hau anu Akahi ho'i aua I ke maka I nā wailele palua I ka palia o ai pi'o I nā wailele palua I ka palia o ai pi'o Kila kila mauna kea me kona nani Helu e kahi o ke ki e Ili mai mauna loa mauna kamahao Ho me noho ka wahine pele mai ka hiki Ho me noho ka wahine pele mai ka hiki Hano hano hualalai e kumaila E ho'ohiwa hiwa ana I nā kona Ai ala nā kuahiwi o kohala Ke holo a ela mai uka a ke kai Ke holo a ela mai uka a ke kai Ma o aku o ale nui haha Hale a ka laha o maui o kama Haina ka inoa ilohe Mahalo I ka nani o nā kuahiwi e lima Mahalo I ka nani o nā kuahiwi e lima Mahalo I ka nani o nā kuahiwi e lima Aloha nui kākou and welcome to Under the Kona Moon. My name is Holeka Inaba and I'm here today with two kama'aina of Kona. On my far left we have Uncle Tommy Duarte and in the middle here we have my father Don Inaba. And we're honored to have the two of you today to share mo'olelo of Kona and specifically the aina of Holualoa where both of you resided as children and your ʻOhana have a lot of history here. So to begin, I'd like to ask Uncle Tommy if you can introduce yourself, when you were born, and a little bit about your ʻOhana, your Makua's generation.
I'm Thomas Duarte Jr. I was born here in the Holualoa, Kahulu area. I'm 72 years old. I was born in November 1948. My grandparents on my father's side came from Madeira, Portugal. They came in the year about 1874. And on my mother's side, my grandmother's family came from Maui, the Haumea family. And on my grandfather's side, it was Charlie Nahali, the Nahali family, who was tied to the Kahalu area. Charlie Nahali, my grandfather, was a sheriff here in Kona for many, many years.
Mahalo. And Dad, if you can share a little bit about...
Okay. My name is Don Inaba. I was born in 1955, October, in Kalikikua. Raised the rest of the time in Holualoa. My parents, my dad is from here, but my mom came from, actually she was born in Lahaina, moved to Lanai, and then came to Hilo, and then to Kona. And my grandparents both immigrated here in the late 1800s from Japan. And they built a little hotel in Honolulu, it's still there, called the Kona Hotel.
I think it's such a good experience to have the two of you here today, because a little different experience maybe growing up even within the small town of Holualoa. So if we can go a little bit into what your family did when you were growing up, and we'll start with Uncle Tommy.
Yeah, my father was a coffee farmer, a rancher, and he also had a piggery. So growing up, we worked in the coffee fields. I mean, most of the people here, that's how they made their living. We didn't have tourism, so coffee was the main industry. So the whole family went and picked coffee all day. And at the end of the day, you came home, we had to pulp the coffee. And we had the old one-cylinder engine, which would take us till from maybe to 10 o'clock at night to pulp the coffee. Because back then we had families that picked coffee for us, like was big families like the Alapai family, or like 14, 15 of them. And so they used to pick like maybe 15, 20 bags in one day. And so there was a lot of work pulping that. And then on the ranch, the cattle, it was a constant battle with the guava and the Christmas berry and keeping the pastures. We did a lot of, all of our summer months we were spent working, clearing the land, taking care of the land. And growing up, it was hard too, because water was precious. We only lived with the water tank. So it was kind of hard without water.
Okay. And Dad, if you can share a little bit about your ʻOhana and what they did, kind of elaborating about what you shared about the hotel.
Well, my dad took over the hotel after my grandfather passed away. And my grandmother was alive for a while, but he took care of everything. So my dad was like a kind of a jack of all trades. You know, he did the electrical, the plumbing, the carpentry, had to do everything. We raised a couple pigs in the back and chickens, and because pretty much almost being kind of self-sustaining, yeah, most of the families were. And like Tommy said, with everything, water was precious because everybody had tanks, you know, and the hotel, we were kind of blessed because we had a few tanks because of, you know, the hotel, but it's, yeah, it was a little different growing up back then, a little harder, you know. There was no street lights. As soon as it came dark, it came dark.
And going into beyond the hotel, I think there's some overlap in the ranching cattle part that maybe you can talk about to introduce what the Inabas did in cattle stuff, and maybe we can talk a story about what ranching was like back then.
Yeah, like Tommy was saying, you know, it's a constant battle with the weeds, trying to keep your pastures clean, you know, and making sure your cattle need water. You know, water is difficult, you know. But
cattle went without water. We just had to ration the water. The cattle, every few days we gave them water, but we had no choice. There was no water. And one time they had to bring in water on the barge so that, you know, we could give the cattle water because there was no water.
water was,
Precious.
you know, precious. You know, people, wherever we get county water, they never have to go to catchment. They really don't understand
Yeah, they don't know how hard it was.
how hard it is. But cattle is good, you know. The feed here is well, and the cattle does well here. That's why.
Okay, and then so for your folks' family, the Duartes, where did you folks raise cattle or?
Right here on this property here, we had like 150 acres where we raised cattle, and then down in Kahalu by the Keho Mauka area where Doc McCoy's office is, we had like about 300 acres of estate land. We used to raise cattle there. And then down in Kailua where the Jackarees is, we had property there. We used to raise cattle there also. And my father didn't believe in horses. He said the horses eat too much feed, too much grass. So when we had to move cattle, you know, take the wind-offs down to the lower pastures to fatten, whatever, my father would go out, he'd find a whole bunch of kids, cut a stick, everybody with a stick. We started here, we went down to where the Keho Junction is. We exchanged cattle there. From there, we went all the way down to Kailua, where Jackie Ray's is. Dropped cattle there and exchanged. And from there, we came up by Joe Gomes, exchanged. And then from there, all the way back up to Honolulu, all on foot. But till today, then, a lot of the people that tell me, Thomas Duarte Sr., was that you? That's my dad. He said, oh, I used to just love when he came pick us up and we went and drove cattle. That was the best fun we had.
And I think, well, speaking to our own family, they remember your dad coming, and if you could share a little bit about that, coming to the gas station.
Oh, your dad, he would come, and when he was running the piggery, he would pick up all the wayward kids, you know, around town that they all wait for him every day after school because they're going down, ride the truck in the back. There's no laws about standing up in the back of the pickup truck, you know. You take like 6 of them, they'll go down, pick up everything, come up, cook the slop, and you know, that was every so many days he would come, put fuel and go down.
Back then, they have all the slop drums in the back of the truck, and every drum would have one of the kids inside the slop drum.
And they always smile.
Just enjoyed it.
They love that.
Yeah.
And I think in remembering some of the stories that our family tells, they said, oh, you know, no matter what time your father would come to put gas, they said, you just go out there, you go put gas. And this is one of his sister's stories. He said, oh, you know, the pig slop comes, it's so stink, I don't like go, we'll go try and hide, you know. Our grandpa said, you get out there and you put the gas for him. And he goes, you know what that smell? That's the smell of money. So we all trying to make a living here. So it was good to hear, you know, all those years back, the interconnection of our ʻOhana, and
Right.
even 2 or 3 generations later today, you know, we're still here in Honolulu, and
Yeah, but back then I remember a lot of people didn't even own cars, and everybody walked. I mean, we lived in Kahalu, we used to walk to school about 3 miles, and everybody's barefoot. Nobody had shoes. We walked to school, walk home, and go to the movies here in Honolulu. 50 cents, my father gave us 50 cents. 25 cents was to get in, and the other 25 cents would buy you a popcorn and a soda. So that's all you needed to go to the movie was 50 cents. And then you'd be maybe 9, 10 o'clock at night, you'd be walking down the road. People would be with their flashlight walking, because everybody walked, very few cars. I mean, that's how it was, yeah.
There was no street lights.
No street light, no, flashlight, yeah.
Flashlight.
Everybody walked.
for school, where did you attend school?
I went Honolulu school, but I always, you know, when I was going to school, still had all the schools were operating. Keoho, Honokohau, Kalawa, Kailua, they still had student body. So I was always wondering what the line was, because where was the cutoff? The people would go to Keoho, and then this side they would come to Hololoa, and Honokohau, same thing, right by Kyopu someplace, would be the break in the side we walk to.
Yeah, but Hololoa, I went to Hololoa school also, and my auntie was my 3rd grade teacher, and my uncle was my 7th grade teacher, so it was kind of rough. And my auntie was one of the worst teachers there. She had her core stick.
We won't need names.
This stick, and about 3/4 inch stick this way. So when she hit your hand, believe me, it hurt. The other teachers, they used to hit us with a ruler.
Yeah.
And we still laugh at that. It didn't hurt at all. But her stick, boy, did it hurt. So one day, Butchie go home, he hid the stick. So my auntie came and she lined us up because she knew it's got to be us, right? She said, if that stick is not back on that desk by the end of the day, you guys are really going to get it. Butchie, go get that stick quick. Put it back. We're going to get killed. Yeah, he put it back.
Your auntie? I had your auntie for a teacher. Yeah, you're right. She still had a stick.
She had a stick and a half, yeah.
Alrighty, so in continuing our conversation about what Kona and Holualoa was like, I think we can kind of go back to a time where we didn't have the big box stores here in Kona, and we had a lot of those mom and pop stores. So I'll start with you again, Uncle Tommy, just to share kind of your recollection of those mom and pop stores, where they were and what ʻOhana ran those stores.
Yeah, because till today we still have the Doris place, which is there today. But then if you went just next door, you had the Yokoyama store, the Yokoyama family. Then just a little ways down from there, you had the Fuji store. Then if you went a little further down, you had the Nishina store. So there was this Honolulu and Kahului area, there was a lot of mom and pop stores. But gradually, one by one, they folded up when the Walmart and Kmart and Second Save and all these big stores came in. In fact, Como store I forgot about Como, so Como store just closed recently too. Because it's hard to compete once the big stores came in, and it's kind of sad, but that's progress, I guess.
And what do you remember of other stores in the area?
He knew more about this side because this is Kamalumalu. You get all the see, I forgot about Fuji store and the kind. But when you go this way, like I go this way, so I had like right up the road had Mrs. Mori had a store. Yeah, Mrs. Mori, and a little bit more north had Nakamoto had one store. And then you went all the way to Harada. Harada had a small store, Ellen Harada's mom. Then you got to Como store, and then to Onizuka was the last store. Yeah, and Onizuka closed up after the grandma passed away. Yeah, they kind of, but yeah, when we were kids, that was like, you could go a little bit with, couple change, you could buy one soda and one potato chip, Chips was like 5 cents or 10 cents, and sodas was, I don't know, maybe 25 cents or something, Yeah. It was cheap.
Yeah.
And besides those, did your family go to those stores too?
Well, most of the times we went to Morinoe store, which is Paul's place now, right? Was the old Morinoe store, yeah, but we still go there. But I think majority of the vegetables and stuff, we used to go Kitie, because Kitie was like the only store in town, yeah, back then. Right by the banyan tree.
And when we were talking with Uncle Chucky Leslie last week, he was saying, and he grew up down at Napo'opo'o, and he was sharing that time they didn't have a KTA down that side, so they had a man come, they would order vegetables, and the truck would come and go distribute the vegetables. But Uncle Tommy, for your family here, did you guys plant your own, or you guys go KTA too, that kind of time?
We did. We had a lot of our own, but yeah, we used to buy also, and I mean, we used to. My father used to raise like maybe about 50 or so chickens, and then we slaughter all the chickens, put them in the freezer, and you know, kind of be more self-sustained. And one thing I remember back then too is we never had any the restaurants in Kona. One of the restaurants we had was if you went down to Manago or Inaba Hotel, and down in Kailo was Ocean View Inn,
Yeah.
or Roast Town at that time we used to call it.
Yeah.
And then because Toshima came in later. Later was Toshima, so yeah, a few restaurants.
Yeah, there were very, very few.
Very few,
Yeah.
very few places to go. But you know, back then they didn't have tourists, so you know, everything was farming. Everything was related to farming. Yeah.
And you guys talk about the importance of water, especially here in Kona. We know Kona is known not for its abundance of water, but for you, Dad, if you could talk about, especially in light of the weather patterns we're seeing today. Sometimes we're seeing, you know, bouts of drought, and now we have in the summer months some downpours, flooding going on. What the waterways were like in Kona, at least in your memory, and then I'll ask you about yours, Uncle Tommy.
Yeah, the only water that we used to catchment was the Waiaha stream, and that water was primarily for the Kona Hotel. So, and other than that, like for us, it was all the water tank, just tank catchment. And I mean, I read the water meters over here. People use like 10, 15,000 gallons a month. Back then, our water tank was 15, 20,000 gallons. That's it. That's what we had to get through all the droughts and you know, whatever. We didn't, but I noticed it kind of got a lot drier from what it was before, because above us there was all rainforest, but then the ranch, Hui Ranch, they bulldozed like about a couple thousand acres above us. And I guess once you get rid of the rainforest, it's a big difference in the rainfall. So yeah, this area is a lot drier than I remember growing up. We used to have a lot of streams that used to come down. We used to divert water into lava tubes to stop the amount of water that came down. But today we don't have as bad as we used to.
Water, like he said, Waiaha was the main stream that kind of they would take water because everything was catchment. And I always laugh that, you know, you talk about all the water filters, yeah. What the water filter was back then was the Budurum bag on the spigot.
That was the filter.
Yeah, that was the water filter. And we drank the water all the time from the tank. And I mean,
You look in the tank, there'll be dead birds, rats, wigglers.
yeah,
But we're here today.
yeah.
And it's so awesome because I forgot to mention, we're here at the Duarte Duarte Road here in Holualoa, and some of Uncle Tommy's mo'opuna are watching in on this interview, and to see the reactions about some of the mo'olelo from back then is classic. But going back to, I think you said growing up you guys would go swim sometimes.
Yeah, we'd go up to the Waiaha River. I don't know why, but we used to call it Alligator River for some reason. There's no alligators there, but for some reason we called it that. Then we'd walk up and there's one place where there's one kind of big pond and we'd go swim. But my mom she was like this deathly afraid of flash floods. I guess because she lived in Hilo for a while and she saw, you know, where it's not raining and that water just comes down through the Wailuku River and a couple other rivers just flood. So we'd always get good scolding if we went, you know, so or we'd have to sneak and go, but we'd go every so often.
I swam in that. Yeah, we all us kids used to go and swim in that pond, the big pond. In fact, my father told me a story was, you know, how precious our shoes is. Nobody had shoes. somebody played a joke game and threw the shoes in the middle of that pond. And he didn't know how to swim. But he said, no, he's gonna get that shoes. So from one end, he dove in, got the shoes, and came out the other end. Because he wasn't gonna go home without that shoes.
Oh,
So, in light of that, how do you see the transition over the years from a time of agriculture and ranching? What was that progression like for you, Dad? We'll start with you.
kind of, it's like progress, yeah, but you know, I remember my dad was on the Land Use Commission and he told me they were, Governor Burns, when he was the governor, he wanted to keep Kailua kind of as a little old fishing village and stuff, and wanted to build the hotels up at ʻOhana Coast. That was to build that Queen Kahumanu Highway, put the hotels, everything out there, the condos, everything, because they have a few sand beaches, but they built here first, then they went there, so now they took over the whole place. I mean, you know, if his plan had worked, would be kind of nice. This would be kind of a little smaller and everything would be out there. But my dad told me all kinds of stuff about the land, you know, it's interesting. They tried to develop that area, but it was costed a lot of money because everything is lava. You have to haul the dirt, you know, everything, you know, get water. Like Tommy we always say, man, we grew up when water was, so we know what it is to, even now with all this technology, still gotta find water, clean water, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, like you were saying, because I remember where the King Cam Hotel now at the beach, there used to be all canoes there on the beach. My father had a canoe, and he had his little shack with all his opelo nets, because everybody used to go out and go opelo fishing. And then in the pier, that's where we used to ship out the cattle. But then they were going to build the first hotel there, and not the first hotel, but the King Cam. And the people kind of fought, but then they said, oh, it's not going to interfere with anything, you know. But as soon as the hotel came in, what happened? They closed down, no cattle barges coming in. All the canoes had to get out. So, I mean, it's, you know, you can't stand in the way of progress. In a way, you know, it brought jobs. Because before then, most of the kids, you went to school on the mainland, and most of the kids never came home. They stayed on the mainland because what jobs there is? Coffee or cattle, there's not much to do. So people didn't come home. So, you know, it's good and bad. I mean, sad to see that stuff is gone, but I guess that's the way it goes, you know, progress. But I mean, right now I can drive down to Kailua and I'll drive through all these subdivisions. But I remember chasing cattle through all the areas that now I drive through. It's all subdivisions, but used to be all cattle at one time. Yeah,
All that Aloha Kona subdivision, all the way up was all
Everything was
cattle,
cattle.
all the way up to Russell Koyanagi's house, you know. It was,
Everything was cattle, yeah. Then when like, water came in, they drilled the first well. And the first well they drilled was in our property, actually, the Mississippi State property we had. And once they built that, all the hotels started coming up. And Keho was the first to develop. A lot of people from the mainland bought and built homes, and that's where the tourist industry came back. So, but like I said, it's good and bad. I mean, it brought jobs. It brought jobs.
like I said, water is everything.
Once you got water, you can develop. And without water,
Yeah.
you can't do anything. Yeah, you need the water.
That is why down south, from the Hokena Beach Road all the way to South Point, there's no water. So you don't see, you know, you only see, you know, small kind, but everybody on catchment, right? So it's not like you can do any kind of major thing.
Yeah, because of the water situation. When I grew up, nobody had flush toilets. So we had to have outhouses because a flush toilet used too much water. And when you took a shower, you just a little pail of water for you to soap up, and then just a little bit of water in the tub for you to wash out, because you couldn't waste water. You couldn't waste water. I mean, it was, it had to last you.
And you mentioned the loading of the cattle at Kailua Pier, and we're speaking of that on the way here. So if you could share and you start off on that one.
Well, if you go way back, the old timers used to just drive the cattle out on the ocean with the horses. They take the cattle out, and then the old steamship, they used to just hoist with an outrigger. They used to hoist the cattle, put them around the horns of the cattle, just lift them up, put them on the ship. But in my days, they had a loading chute where the barge used to come in and used to load the cattle that way.
Yeah, I saw that a couple times before they closed them. Yeah.
And that cattle, did you folks ever send cattle out, or you folks just raised cattle here?
We never was raising cattle that time. My dad didn't have. Maybe your dad guys saying that. I know that Joe Combs used to send.
Oh yeah.
Tom Monaka.
We used to send cattle too because here in Kona, we didn't have the slaughterhouses, a place we could feed the grain to fatten cattle for slaughter. So most of the ranchers, you'd get the animals that were like about 8 months old or so. They're ready to go into the feedlot, the win-offs, and we'd ship it all to the mainland. Or we'd go to the mainland into the feedlots. So we didn't raise too much cattle we raised cattle for beef, but not that much.
And I think just as a general kind of recalling of those times, if you could maybe start off by sharing one of your favorite memories of growing up here.
I think that I got to see, like Tommy said, we got to go to just right down the road. We could walk to the theater. And I always remember the first movie I ever went there was Swiss Family Robinson. It was in black and white. I always remember that.
And I think that's kind of cool because the theater still stands today, and Auntie Lehua is a kumuhula who teaches out of that very theater, and your mo'opuna get to go there and different, not to watch a movie, but to continue traditions. And Uncle Tommy, for you, a memory?
Yeah, like that was our outing for Sundays. Like I said, we work hard on the coffee farm. But Sundays, my father would take us to the beach down in Kailua. We had the canoes, and we'd go swimming and fishing. And then we'd come up to the theater. We'd go to the matinee. And what I used to like was they had the chapters before the movie started. Captain Marvel chapter. And I remember we used to be at the edge of our seat watching the spaceship, right? And back then, no joysticks, everything was knobs, so they was running the spaceship with knobs. Because I saw a movie of Captain Marvel, I had to laugh. I said, I used to be at my edge of my seat for that. And he got going with the thing, and there was just a little bit of smoke coming out the back of this spaceship, and we used to be at the edge of our seat. I'm thinking, how stupid was that?
But that was technology of the era, though,
Yeah, well, back then.
And for you growing up in that era, what is something that you would like keiki of Kona your mo'opuna to know and to remember as they grow up and after you folks are no longer here, something that they should keep in mind? And I'll start with you, Uncle Tommy.
Well, to think back about our ancestors, like my family, the Nahali family, we connected to Kahalu. And we have the heiaus and everything down in there, and and it's my family used to own this portion where they had the fish pond. They had King Kalakawa's summer house, and they had I forget the name of that building. It's called. My Auntie Pei used to have luau's and hula dancing, and important to remember about that, and also our connection to Hololai Mountain. I mean, my father was hired to do some fencing on the mountain, and they were going to start a logging industry there, but then they decided against it because it would do away with all the native plants, which was a good thing that they didn't do what they were going to do. But then we got a connection to the mountain, and my daughter runs a program now where she takes school kids, college kids, anybody who wants to go up there and learn about the plants, learn about the history of the place. I think the grandkids are following up with that. So I think that's important. It's important. Yeah.
And Dad, anything to do with like the next generations to know and remember as time goes on? Because like I said before this, at some point this video and this interview is gonna be old. So you know, and I'm young now and I'll be around for a bit, but it's something that you would like the next generation to know.
Oh, just that, you know, things change, but a lot of things still stay the same, you know. The mountain, like you said, the mountain, the ocean, as long as people take care of it, it'll always be here for future generations. And I think that is the most important thing, that you gotta save some wild space. You need to save a little bit of wild space here and there. Just so to keep things in perspective.
And I think, you know, that's what we all love about our outer islands. Yeah, it's not the city. We still have areas to go holo up the mountain or down at the kai, and that's what made probably your childhoods and our generation still have a connection, and it made our lives so enriched. So, like you said, keeping in mind those open spaces for the next generation.
Yeah, and I think it's important to the kids. So if they want to get ahead in life, you cannot be lazy. You got to work hard, study hard, and treat everybody like your neighbor. Don't cheat anybody. And never mind about what color your skin is, your racial background, religion. You got to treat everybody like your neighbor. I mean, it's sad to see what's happening in the United States and in the world today, that kids gotta think twice. Treat people like your neighbor, and you get ahead.
We grew up in a place where you get so much diversity, you know, and so many different races and religions. And it's one thing I never knew what racism was, because everybody to me was the same. That never mattered, right? I mean, if they was your friend,
We all got along.
yeah, we all got along. I mean, you know, that race was never an issue, you know. It's funny, but now it's like major all over, you know. It's like you said,
Kids gotta learn to get along with one another. We all gotta learn to get along with one another if we wanna change this world. You know.
And I think going back to your grandparents' generation, everybody came here, you know, to create a better future for themselves, and luckily the people of this place, the Hawaiians, taught and lived the way of aloha, and that's, you know, something that we might be better off to remember and try and practice in our own lives today. And we're all here in the middle of the big ocean, but
right.
to remember aloha, and today we're all intermingled families, you know, all kids, and we all have our place here and to honor each other. So, okay, and Uncle Tommy, if you could share a little bit about your ʻOhana, specifically, you know, your parents' generation and who they were, how many siblings they had, what they did for a living, and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I said, my grandparents on my father's side came from Madeira, Portugal, and you know, they worked on the farm, and back then too, my father worked for the family on this property, on the Unk's family. It was a German, the guy named Luther Unks did a lot here in Kona. He started the first phone company on this island, on this area. He started the first soda company here, and my father was the yard boy. He used to take care of the chickens, the cows. He'd milk the cows, he'd churn butter, and my cousin, his cousin was the maid. And eventually, ironically, my father little by little bought this property. And that's why today, luckily, my kids each have their piece of property. But you know, properties was only like $100 an acre, or you know, like I'm talking about the property we had in Kailua. That was 40 acres of land. And my father was coming up the road one day, and his uncle, Tom Gomes, was coming up, and he said, you know what, I'd like to lease that land you have down there, 40 acres. And he said, well, okay, sure, I'll lease it, but what are you going to do with it? It's too dry, you can't do anything with it. My father said, no, he'll manage. So he said, oh, sure, I'll lease it to you. And then he finally said, well, you know what, I'll sell it to you. And my father said, how much? He said, $2,000. $2,000 for the 40 acres. And my father was so excited, he ran home to his mother. But my grandmother said, well, where are we going to get $2,000 from? $2,000 was a lot of money back then. But between he and his brothers, they were able to manage the money and bought that property. And together, they were able to buy a lot of these property. Yeah. So, it's like I said, work hard and get ahead.
I think that speaks to a lot of that older families here in Kona had pieces of land kind of all over the place, and that was, you know, luckily, like you said, for our generations, because today Kona's unaffordable, just crazy expensive, and we've been blessed to have had kupuna who, we don't know if they were thinking about us, but you know, they got in there and were able to get some land, and we're blessed today with that. So, Dad, if you could share a little bit.
It's so important, you know, because like you said, Christ out of paradise, and now, well, back then, you know, like Tommy said, you know, money was, you know, to buy a property was, you know, big challenge for a lot of the families, you know, because they were all farmers and, you know, little ranchers and stuff. And so my dad bought a couple properties, you know, way back, just here and there, you know, small, not big ones, but just small properties. So at least we have something, you know, and so important. And it's, you know, but the only thing is, I think that my grandmother had this piece of property down at the beach, but the land tax became so expensive, it got so astronomical that, you know, we sold it to the county for you know, part of the park at White Sands. It was right next to White Sands. So at least it never got developed, you know, it's still part of the thing, but yeah.
A lot of people don't know too that here in Kona, way back when, they grew cotton, they grew sugar cane, they grew sisal. They tried all different industries, but Kona was just too dry and too rocky. At that time they had a railroad. I don't know if you remember, there was a railroad in Kona. That's where they used to take the cane. And they used to just, from up here, they used to just run a cable on trees or poles, whatever, down to the railroad. And what they do is have the pulley with a hook. They put the pulley on there, put a bundle of cane, and just let it go. And it would just go all the way down to the railroad. But my father, as kids, they used to go with sticks, they wait for the come, then knock it off. And every bundle that fell, they'd carry it down to the railroad, and they get paid for taking the cane down. so they used to make some money taking the cane down.
And Dad, do you have a story about the sugar cane, but not in Kona, but grandma with the.
Yeah, my mom she lived in Hilo for a while, and they used to have these flumes, high up the ground, and they used to run the water, because this Hilo has plenty of water, yeah, so they just would run the flume, would put the sugar in, and would take it down to the mill. And my mom, as a kid, they used to go, and when they put the cane on, they would sit on the cane and ride the flumes down. But you have to get off at the pickup point, if not, you're going to get all the way to the mill. And then you would have it. So my mom said she missed one time, and the lucky thing, somebody went run down into the last pickup, and she got off. And she said that was the end of her riding sugarcane in the flume.
And I think if you want to share real quick about your dad's generation here in Kona.
My dad, he has a lot of siblings. There's actually, I think, 8 or 9 of them. And they all, my grandmother was a firm believer in education, because way back then, my uncles, and they got their college degrees, Albert and Minoru, and most of them got their degree, which is kind of amazing way back then, But everybody went on to do their own thing and be okay. My dad stayed and took care of my grandmother and took care of the hotel. So,
My dad's oldest brother, who really raised them, because my grandfather, his father passed away. My father was only 2 years old. My father was the youngest from the family. So my uncle was the school teacher and principal, took care of the rest of the kids. And his other sister, my auntie, she wound up becoming a nun, going to the Sacred Hearts Convent in Honolulu. And his other brother, William, he owns the property next door to us. Well, he was like my father. He was a rancher, farmer, raised pigs. And the younger brother died about 26 years old. He got pneumonia back then. A lot of people used to die from pneumonia back then. And, but my father, well, he said with my Auntie Alice and my Uncle Joe, he quit school at 7th grade. He said he had it. He decided to go work full time. And, funny story growing up, my dad said the school used to pay 5 cents a tail for rat tails, because they were trying to get rid of rats. And so everybody used to go out at night, like the kids, and they would get the rat tails, and then competition who would get the most rat tails, and then competition who would get the biggest rat. So my father said he and his brother, what they did was they cut the biggest rat they could, soaked it in water, and they stretched it. When they went to school with their rat hanging on the stick, all the other kids looked, they said, where did you guys find that rat? But that's what kids at Kolohe back then.
Crafty Baba's out. I wanted to go back. You mentioned the German family that you said that was your grandfather?
Yeah, there's Luther Unks. He's the one that owned the house down on the bottom of the hill here. So like I say, he started the first phone company. He was also the librarian, he road overseer, and in fact, I found papers in the house, and it showed when they built the Kemoko stretch. They had the surveyors made $1.50 a day. The laborers was like 75 cents a day. One side of beef, $25 for a side of beef, 25 bucks. And it's kind of funny that the donkey hauling water made more than everybody else, $2 a day.
And I wanted to go back to that because I just learned that today that your ʻOhana was pili to that German family, and that's actually where 3 generations back for me, my great-grandpa was their cook. Before the hotel, before they opened the hotel, and he was their personal cook. And at such time that the hotel finally was built in 1926, and when they were stretching the cable of the phone lines across Kona, then some of the guys would stay there, and just a interconnection between our ʻOhana even was that 100 years ago almost, you know.
Yeah, he was a real entrepreneur that everybody who came to Kona eventually stayed at his house. Yeah. In fact, he told my father when he first came to Kona, when he looked down to Kailua, he said all you would see is fingers of lava, and it was very barren in between. Because from what I gathered, I guess the Calvi wasn't introduced here in Kona yet. I think when the Calvi trees came in, that's when all this growth came. But before that, didn't have anything. And if you come up Holalai Road, you see all the kukui nut trees. He told my father he planted that trees because he used to come from Kailua on the wagon, and it used to be super hot, no shade. So they used to go down and get ice and whatever from, and so he planted those kukui nut trees for shade because the kukui nut tree grow fast, yeah. And still today, you see all the kukui nut trees along Holalai Road. So he was the one who planted that. You know.
Well, is there any last mana'o you folks want to share? I just want to take this moment to, first of all, I want to mahalo the Office of Hawaiian Affairs for being a fiscal sponsor for this program. La'iopua 2020 here in Kona for being the organizer of this event. Naleo TV, of course, for their wonderful production staff, and for helping to kind of guide and malama this ike, this knowledge and these experiences. But most importantly today, to the two of you for sharing of your childhood and of a time long past and gone past right now. But any last mana'o you want to share? I'll start with you.
No, I'm pretty good. Thank you so much, though, for having us.
Yeah, well, like I said before, the main thing to the grandkids, work hard, study hard, treat everyone like your neighbor, and we can get ahead in this world today. It's the best way to get ahead. So the grandkids should learn from that.
Mahalo nui, and thank you again everyone for tuning in to this segment of Under the Kona Moon. We look forward to seeing you again. Aloha.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. And Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, when the lines between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay? Stand beside each other, come what may. Was a promise really something people kept? Not just something they would say and then forget. Did families really bow their heads to pray? Did daddies really never go away? Ooh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Grandpa, everything is changing fast. They call it progress, but I just don't know. And Grandpa, let's wander back into the past and paint me a picture of long ago. Do lovers really fall in love to stay? stand beside each other, come what may. Was a promise really something people kept? Not just something they would say and then forget. Did families really bow their heads to pray? Did daddies really never go away? Ooh, oh, oh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Ooh, oh, oh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Ooh, oh, oh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Kei hola ka ua, hali hali na lehua o luna. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Kei hola ka ua, hali hali na lehua o luna. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Helele I pua I ke kai, pulale ana lehua I ka moana. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. He kupala ka ua I ke kai, ke ho'i hou e aloha mai. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. He mele no e kulani, ka waile hua ala ka honua. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. He mele no e kulani, ka waile hua ala ka honua. Ka waile hua ala ka honua. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, yeah, yeah. Hey, yeah.
Kona Moon, shining so bright, smiling at you right out of the sky.
Under the Kona Moon is brought to you in part by La'iopua 2020 and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
The preceding program was a production of Naleo TV.